Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, it's a pre-Nintendo Direct extra E3 Vaganza. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. We've got a good show for you today. We're going to be talking about the first 3/4 of E3 all the way through Monday night, and then later today, we will be releasing a second episode where we recap everything that's actually in the Nintendo Direct and the Treehouse Live. But Mark, in the meantime, how you doing?
I'm doing good. What a strange E3 it's been.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, you are not lying. It's been so weird, and we're gonna get into it in greater detail. I think we understand there's a limited shelf life on this episode, as it's only really going to be relevant until that Nintendo Direct pops, like 9 hours after we post this episode. But dang it, we've got pre Nintendo Direct things to discuss.
Yeah, and God willing, we'll get through it all.
Yeah, and Mark, I'm just gonna rip this one off now. Yes, there is a bandage on my ear again. Remember last week when I cut my ear shaving? I bandaged it up. It turns out I took a pretty good chunk out of my ear.
Oh my gosh.
So it had scabbed over pretty well, and then the other day I got out of the shower. And
no.
I was drying my hair, and I must have just rubbed the. So anyway, I started bleeding all over the bathroom. It was a nightmare.
Oh no. Okay, well, tell me this, because last week, I was joking, we were ha-haing. It's like, oh, well, did you get your ears pierced? Would you get your ears pierced? But tell me,
Right.
Patrick, have you taken out so much of your ear that it would not be possible for you to get the earlobe pierced anymore?
Wow. I don't think so, but now I'm scared to try, frankly.
You'll go down to Claire's, and like the 16-year-old will be like, "Sir, I can't.
There's
I
just
cannot
not enough
do
ear to
it."
pierce here. I just can't do it. Speaking of things you just can't do, my copy of Sonic Forces for the Nintendo Switch. Would you like to borrow it? You can certainly try. All you gotta do is email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And send us a mailing address where we can mail my copy of Sonic Forces. One thing that might happen, though, and I'm sorry to say this, or I'm delighted to say it, not clear which, is that there may be my copy of Untitled Goose Game in there. There's nothing you can really do about it, but that's just what it is. You get to play either game for however long you have it, which is however long you want to have it, and then you send it back. I pay for postage both ways. It's the perfect borrowing program.
The other thing you can do is you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you to AJAD223 for the 5-star review on the US Apple Podcast Store. Here's the thing, Patrick. I don't know exactly like the nomenclature that this person wants to use. It could be AJAD223. It could be AJAD. It could be AJAD223. But which one of those it is, thank you so much for leaving us a 5-star review. It was a really kind 5-star review too, which is
nice.
Double our pleasure. So thank you so much.
Let me ask you this. Is it possible that it is comic book artist David Aha?
Oh my goodness. It absolutely could be. There's no reason it couldn't be.
Big fans of your Hawkeye run over here. All right, Mark, let's get it. Look, this is an episode where, and thank you for reviewing that. If you are David Aha, if you are not David Aha, either way, we love it. And yes, the more reviews come in, the happier we feel, and the more able we are to shout you out on this show. We'll do it if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts US Store. And if you do it anywhere else, just shoot us an email, Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And point us towards the review, and we will absolutely shout you out on the show. Mark, I feel like we've got kind of a slipshod thing going on up top here, because we just want to get into discussing E3. We're throwing out the rest of the format of the show, right? So we can just get into E3. And I think the time has come, Mark. Let's get into it. Let's discuss the first 3 days of E3 2021. So we're going to be focusing primarily on things that were announced or focused on at these various conferences that will appear on Switch. And then sort of after we get through those, then we're going to kind of loop back around for sort of like general thoughts, right? General thoughts on E3 as a whole so far. But Mark, you want to take us away?
Yeah, so E3 proper, I feel like kicked off with the Ubisoft Forward event on Saturday. And really the big announcement coming out of this Nintendo wise is of course Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope coming next year in 2022. And this I feel like this like digital E3 maybe more than once past anyways have felt like some things got leaked a little haphazardly, like right before the actual announcement.
Yeah.
It happened with the Bethesda Star. It's not Starlight.
Field?
It's not Starscream. Starfield.
It's Starfield.
Yeah. The Starfield
Definitely not
announcement.
Starscream. That's a Transformer.
And for Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Nintendo was actually the ones who accidentally leaked it. They published a page on Nintendo.com for it a few hours before Ubisoft's presentation. But my goodness, am I so glad to know that this game is coming. It makes a ton of sense that they are making a sequel to Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle from 2017. Was such a like fresh, kind of like fun game, unexpectedly good.
Yeah.
And a ton of fun. So yeah, really excited to have this. From Ubisoft's website, quote, Mario, Princess Peach, Luigi, Rabbid Mario, and Rabbid Peach are teaming up once again in Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, and they're bringing along some new and kind of familiar faces to take on the mysterious entity known as Cursa and its minions. Cursa has been plunging the galaxy into chaos, twisting the planets with its evil influence, and consuming the energy of the Sparks, uncanny new characters formed by the fusion of Lumas and the Rabbids. Mario, his friends, and the Rabbids crew will have to travel throughout the galaxy to save planets, rescue the Sparks, and ultimately defeat Cursa.
Cool, man. We're going into space. We're Mario Galaxy-ifying Mario plus Rabbids. I'm all about it. And I think it's so cool to be that we're just in such a different place with this conceptually, where, you know, when Mario plus Rabbids was originally leaked, man, people were like, what is this? I don't want it. This is ridiculous. Mario's carrying a gun. I hate it. And, you know, now when this leaked far closer to the actual announcement, people were like, oh, yeah, rad, cool. I'm down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great to start in a positive place with this.
Totally. And, you know, with like the first game, like you were saying, it was like Rabbids seemed like it's such a weird mashup. Like, you know, Rabbids are kind of gross and weird. They're like proto minions. And but to see it like actually like work out in the game, and you're like, oh, this is actually like really like the game is really fun. The characters are really funny. I am really excited to see what they can do with a sequel. Patrick, do you remember at the end of the first game? Basically, I'm trying to figure out, is there a reason that they're in space? Like,
ooh. You're asking, like, is it an end game situation where, like, oh yeah, Thor is with the Guardians of the Galaxy, so that's why he's in a spaceship? Yeah. No, I don't remember there being any, and I need no narrative reason to get these guys in space. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because the reason I kind of asked is, I guess like the trailer's the first time that I think we have seen like a Rabid Rosalina, and I already love Rabid Rosalina. Because she has her own sort of like chaotic energy, different from Rabid Peach, where Rabid Rosalina is just so put out to have to like have to do anything, and it's really it's very funny to me. I also love her weapon, which seems to be like a Luma like pull string toy that has some sort of like gun built inside of it.
Yeah, it's all ridiculous, and I love the way that they like craft unique personalities for the Rabbid versions of the characters that like draw on the personalities of the original characters, but then also like warp them in really like twisted ways. Like the Rabbid Mario has this sort of like I don't know, he's got this like smooth smarm to him that like I think is really funny. Um, yeah, I'm very excited to see more of this game. It's a little bit of a bummer that it's a year out. You know that we won't see it till 2022. But like whatever, I'll take it.
I feel like that was such the theme of E3 is even like Microsoft's conference, which for my money has been the most interesting one so far, just because the volume of games
Yeah.
that they announced, but like so much of it was 2022. It and which like I can understand given like all the COVID delays and stuff like that, but it has made E3 kind of like not super exciting. And so I am curious what like Nintendo's presentation is going to be like because they've promised that it's 4 games mostly that are coming in 2021.
Yeah. And we'll again, it's so funny to me. We're recording this episode like
Right.
12 hours before this their presentation. So any speculating about it, but yeah, like totally. Like at this point, there was so much in this whole like weekend plus of announcements that I felt like sort of underwhelmed or like, oh fine, but you got to wait for it. Um, that like I don't know. I'm sort of like pinning my hopes on Nintendo to pull me out of this, right? But we'll see. We'll see. And by the time you're listening to this, you probably already know.
So Sparks of Hope will have teams of 3 from a roster of 9, which I guess is
is
more.
one more is
Okay.
one more than the first game. So I wonder if they are taking out, or I wonder if it's all the same characters plus Rabbid Rosalina, or if like they're removing the Rabbid Yoshi, because we didn't see him or Vanilla
Oh
Yoshi
yeah.
in the trailer here. But yeah, it's just that from a roster of 9 has me like, ooh, what's going on there? What's that about?
It also promises the battles unfold through a mixture of real-time action and turn-based tactics, which I think is just the same how it was last time. Are we reading anything else into this?
Yeah, well, there's a it says real time action, and I'm not sure what because the original game was purely turn based, right? Um, so I'm wondering what actually that means in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like the gameplay experience. I was reading something else somewhere else, and I forgive me for not being able to source it right now. But saying that the worlds were less linear in the new game, that it was more like wide open spaces that you could sort of explore on your own.
That's what it looked like from the trailer. That was kind of my
Yeah.
takeaways. Like when they do show the overworld, which this game looks beautiful, by the way. Like the first one looked really good. This one looks like they took it up a notch. Um, but yeah, it looked to me like the last ones were very like linear. Like you were on a prescribed path. Sometimes it would branch off a little bit, but this seems to be like much more open. It seems like the characters are running around in an open space. I don't know. I'm really excited about this. Just like you were saying, kind of a little bit, tiny bit of a bummer that it's not coming out till 2022 sometime. But cool to know that it exists at all.
And then the rest of the Nintendo announcements from here on out, I feel like are uh, bummers compared to this, right? Like
Totally. Oh,
this is the
totally.
high point. This is the high point of the pre Nintendo Direct Nintendo announcements.
Yeah, yeah. Also coming out of Ubisoft Forward, no surprise, Just Dance 2022 is coming to all platforms except the Wii for the first time, I guess, ever in the life of that
Yeah.
franchise. It will not be getting a Wii release in 2021.
So R.I.P. Just Dance on the Wii.
But
R.I.P.
that will be released on November 4th. And so that was it for Nintendo announcements at Ubisoft Forward. Devolver Digital, they had a showcase, and the one game that I thought was interesting that they showed off was called Demon Throttle. It's an 8-bit co-op action game, and it'll be available only on Switch. And the part that I thought was interesting about this is that it's only available physically from special reserve games. So it won't be a digital release. And it seems like it's not as limited run as like a limited runs game release, but
Right.
I don't really know.
That's weird. Did they get into? I didn't watch the Devolver presentation. Did they get into why it was releasing physically only?
No, but it's a good marketing gimmick because we're talking about, and I don't know if we would have necessarily talked about it otherwise.
I mean, it's a decent marketing gimmick. It seems like a terrible sales gimmick, right? Like that's gonna make it cost more, and then you gotta like go and get it. I feel like most indie games like live or die on your ability to just pick it up instantly digitally. But yeah, that's weird. I like that the developer here is called Doinksoft. That's great.
It's a good name, strong name. And then yesterday brought us the Square Enix Presents showcase, which again could, in theory, have had a lot of good Switch news. Of course, did not at all.
Had zero Switch news, like a big fat goose egg. None.
There was, I guess, one thing that's notable that we could talk about that's not Switch related yet, but I guess like its absence from Switch is what's notable to me. Is that
Yeah.
Final Fantasy? There's a new collection called Final Fantasy. Actually, is it a collection? Let me start all over.
It is not.
It's just Final Fantasy 1 through 6 Pixel Remaster.
Yeah, so these are re-releases of the first 6 Final Fantasy games, but leaning into, at least in the marketing here, that they are being done with pixels, which is to set them apart from the mobile releases from a couple years ago, where they used like totally different graphics, replacing the original beautiful pixel art with these weird like chibi anime looking characters.
Yeah, and it's really, on the one hand, it's like, oh, like that's good news, right? That we're getting like the old pixel art. But
Here's the thing though. It is not the old pixel art. It is some sort of weird new mutant pixel art. There was a website, possibly RPG City, someone like that, that was posting a comparison of, because this thing is teased in like a very short trailer that shows maybe like 11 seconds of gameplay of some of these games, where they took the sprites, the pixel sprites from this new version, the sprites from the mobile version from a couple years ago, and the original sprites, and like sort of stacked them up together, and like the new version is neither the most recent old version, and it's not the original old version either. So like, who knows? This is just Square Enix remaking these games, and like not doing exactly the same old thing, which is what everyone wants.
I just don't get it. I really don't understand how Square Enix handles these like classic RPGs. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It's mind-boggling.
The only thing I can think is like the source code or whatever they need to just present. I just don't get what they gain. I just don't understand what they gain by like futzing with this stuff.
Yeah, and they must have the original code somewhere, because Final Fantasy 3/6 was released on the Super NES Classic Edition like 3 years ago.
Maybe, and look, I have zero technical knowledge, but maybe they have like the N64 like ROMs, but they don't have the source code, or the Super Nintendo like ROMs, but they don't have the source code, and so they can release the old ones, but they're not able to like make any enhancements that you would need for like the mobile version to add touchscreen controls. I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. These are not, as of right now, coming to Switch. They're coming to PC and mobile, presumably. And maybe this is the first time they're coming to PC, and so maybe that's why they're being like remade. But I don't know. Kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Well, and one thing to note is that, and maybe this speaks to the graphic presentation, is that in the screens that they were showing of gameplay, it looked like it was a widescreen presentation, which none of these games would have been made in widescreen originally. So maybe that's why they had to like futz with the with
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe.
I really don't know. But I mean, it does look like the original, and probably the first three Final Fantasies could actually stand to be improved in their sprites. The original Final Fantasy, especially like during fights, it's like a mostly a black background, and like it doesn't give a good sense of space in the way that later games in the series would. So like I can get them wanting to improve some things, but like I don't know, the closer you can hew to like what the games originally were, the more attractive as a package I think they are.
And then the other thing Nintendo Switch related at the Square Enix conference
Oh yeah.
was Legend of Mana. They which comes out like Legend of Mana Remastered, I think is what it's called, and it comes out later this month. And so
Yeah, I believe
they
so.
had like the opening cinematic for it. Uh and that was pretty much it. Or not pretty much it. That was exactly it from the Square Enix conference. And so yesterday on Monday, Capcom had their showcase, and I've got to tell you, Patrick, that I kind of was hoping that we would get
Yeah.
something from Capcom, but it was such a weird showcase. They didn't show off any new games. They didn't talk about any new games. It was all just kind of like laying out the roadmap and showing off some features for Monster Hunter Rise, for Monster Hunter Stories 2, Wings of Ruin, which is out in like a little less than a month. It comes out on July 9th. And then talking a little bit about Grace Ace Attorney Chronicles. So Capcom didn't even really talk about anything uh, that goes out too far, like really anything later than July that we didn't know about.
Yeah. I mean, it's to Capcom's credit, they did tell us exactly what like in their rundown of what they were going to talk about. They said they were going to do Resident Evil Village. They were going to talk about the two new Monster Hunter games. They were going to talk about Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, and then check in with Capcom Fighting. And that is actually all they did.
You're
It
right.
was
Can't be
it.
too mad. Can't be too mad. They delivered exactly what was on the tin. Um, so to run down this pretty quickly, like Monster Hunter Stories 2, Wings of Ruin, again, due out on July 9th. There's a free trial version where you can quote experience the opening hours that comes out on June 25th, and progress carries over to the main game. So essentially like a demo. And then free updates to both Monster Hunter Stories 2 and Monster Hunter Rise featuring content from the other game. So like Palamutes from Rise will be coming to Wings of Ruin is one example of that.
This is smart. I like that they're doing this. That they've got two of these games out at the same time, and they can just like start feeding each one with content from the other. Like I think that's smart and that's fun. If I was a Monster Hunter person, I would be super excited about this.
Yeah, and I am interested in seeing what the reviews for Monster Hunter Stories 2 is like. I don't know that I'll ever be able to get into like mainline Monster
Yeah.
Hunter, but this might be a fun it looks cute, and so it might be a fun thing, like a fun like entry point into the series for me.
Plus, you can try it for free on the 25th,
Oh
and if
yeah,
you
yeah,
are
yeah.
enjoying it, you just apply that to the actual game.
And then they also talked a little bit about Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, which is being released on July 27th. Again, I'm very excited for this. I could have seen nothing more about it. I know that I would have been picking it up, but they did show a little bit of gameplay footage, including the dance of deduction with Sherlock Sholmes, and not to be confused with Sherlock Holmes, and
No, no, no.
summation examination, another feature in that game.
It's so funny to me to show off gameplay footage from the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Like, if ever a game did not require gameplay footage in a trailer, like this is it. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's it seems like a cool game, especially coming off of playing the two Famicom Detective Club games. Now I'm like genuinely interested in playing another game like that, especially one with the crazy like Sherlock Holmes analog. who is just different enough in personality where I'm like, now hold on, who is this guy?
And then that was pretty much it for the big presentations that were like specific to Switch. We learned a little bit more about Diablo 2 Resurrected, which is coming to Switch in addition to basically all other platforms. It's Diablo 2 Resurrected will be released on September 23rd. And then the other thing that we learned is that River City Girls 2 is in development at Way Forward and is coming to Switch in addition to other platforms. And that was announced at the Limited Run Games showcase. River City Girls 2 is going to have 2-player online co-op, and Limited Run Games announced a bunch of like physical versions of games that have already been released, but I think this was the only thing Switch related that was like brand new.
Well, the only I think it was the only new game that they showed off. Everything else was either upcoming games that we already know about that they're making physical versions of. But yeah, where they had the scoop on that this game even existing at all. And Mark, that's basically it. Like beyond that, there were a smattering of indie games. Yeah, it is weird. Like it's nice that there were a bunch of Switch games at the Capcom thing, but it's they were all games that are either out already or that we already knew about or whatnot. But it is a bummer to get virtually nothing from that Square Enix presentation. It makes me think that we'll see something from Project Triangle Strategy in the Nintendo Direct. There's still room for Capcom or Square Enix to show up at the Nintendo Direct tomorrow, or this morning. Again, we are recording this so close to the actual thing. But yeah, I mean that's basically it.
Yeah, I guess I almost shouldn't say that it's like so weird because it's not that unexpected that at these conferences they weren't focusing a lot of attention on Nintendo stuff. Like just in general, a lot of these companies, like Square Enix has, all of their Western-focused titles from like, how do you say Eidos? Eidos?
Yeah,
Eidos. Yeah,
Eidos.
Yeah. And so these companies are so much more than just their Japanese units now that I think like it makes sense at a conference like this that we wouldn't necessarily see a ton of stuff that's Nintendo focused, because in E3s from the past we haven't necessarily seen a ton that was just like Nintendo exclusive.
Yeah, well, and it's also important to remember that one of the things that we had heard about that we thought was probably going to happen was that Nintendo was going to reveal their new model of the Nintendo Switch prior to E3, so that developers could show off the games that they were working on for the new hardware, or at least like put that like also coming to Nintendo Switch, new Nintendo Switch or whatever. And that didn't happen. If there is new Nintendo hardware coming, and I still believe that there is, we're not going to know about it for a while.
It's going to be weird.
It's going to be some weird like weekend in August that they're just like, oh, by the way.
That was truly so weird how like white hot those rumors burned for a few days, where like reputable sources like Bloomberg, right? Like people were adding their 2 cents, being like, yep, it's like imminent and it's going to be announced like before E3, so that way partners can show off their titles that are created for it. And it's like, okay, like, enough sources are chiming in on this that either they were all misled, or Nintendo punted and were like, nope, like we're not going to. That's going to be so weird if like 2 weeks after E3 they're like, and here's the Switch, like Pro.
Yeah, it'll be wild. I mean, I do looking back at like the Bloomberg reporting, I don't believe that they were saying that they had like anyone on record saying that they were going to announce it before E3. I think that was just like well-informed speculation, and probably from talking with developers who were probably saying, we would like Nintendo to reveal this thing so we could talk about our games.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right that it was like it was kind of, their reporting specifically was more kind of like it would make sense for them to do it, but they didn't have anybody like from Nintendo saying like, and we're going to do it.
this be a lesson to everyone. If you are going, well, it would only make sense for Nintendo to whatever, however that sentence ends, you're wrong. You're not going to get ahead of them. You can't guess what these guys do.
Totally. Well, there's a few just kind of like other things that happened at E3 that are not Nintendo related that I'd love to get your thoughts on, Patrick.
Yeah.
So first, like this was pre E3 as part of the Jeff Keighley's Summer of Games. We did get a re-reveal trailer for Elden Ring, which is the new like From Software title, the developers of like Bloodborne and Sekiro. Patrick, any thoughts on Elden Ring? Is From Software a developer that you are following?
Not really. You played some Bloodborne, right? Or you also played Dark Souls when the remaster came to Switch a couple years ago. So I assume you're tuned into this.
Yeah, I loved Bloodborne. I loved Dark Souls. I played like up to the first boss of Sekiro and loved it, but then I was like, this stresses me out too much. I can't play it anymore. Which is definitely like that like From Software experience. I was not as blown away as other people by the Elden Ring trailer. I think From Software has like awesome character design, and so the character designs on this were awesome. But otherwise, to my eye, like it just kind of looked like a Dark Souls game, which is not a bad thing. But yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah, so sort of a limited thing. Were there any other games that were revealed or that we like got to dig into here from any of the other publishers that you were excited about? I mean, we can also like touch on like the Microsoft presentation because it was so big and had so many games in it, and it's obviously their first presentation with Bethesda like under their watch.
That's right. And actually there was something from that was announced at the Microsoft conference that does end up being Switch related, because they showed off a game called A Plague Tale Requiem, which is a sequel to the first A Plague Tale game that I think was released first on Xbox. But this sequel, I haven't played it, but my understanding is that it's kind of like a survival horror-esque game that's kind of set in like medieval Europe. And the sequel was announced for multiple platforms. It was shown off first at the Microsoft conference, but later confirmed for other platforms, including the Switch as a cloud version.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder. That's because there's also Outer Worlds 2 was revealed at the Microsoft showcase, and obviously you played that game, the first of those games, on Switch. I don't think we can expect this one to also come to Switch. I mean, Microsoft was throwing around a lot of that like Xbox exclusive branding at the beginning of these trailers. But like, what was that of interest to you too? Do you want to go back to that world?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first Outer Worlds on Switch, even with the performance problems. And I should go back and play the DLC. I don't know. They might both be out for Switch now. I know the first one is, but I really enjoyed that game a lot. Yeah, there was stuff at the Microsoft conference that I thought looked cool. I know it's been out for a while, but like Grounded, the game where you're like, it's basically like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the game. That looks like really fun. The Outer Worlds 2, Back for Blood looks awesome. I loved Left 4 Dead, and this is from the same developers. Forza Horizon 5 again looks like aesthetically just like absolutely gorgeous, even though racing games are totally not my thing. And so that's how I had the what is, I don't even know how you pronounce this. It's that Kickstarter game that we talked about from the developers of Suikoden. It's like Euden or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's like the Audacity. That's wrong. Chronicles.
It's like
something like that. Yeah,
it's like, and so they showed off a trailer for that at the Microsoft conference. Even though the main game isn't coming until 2023, there's like a Eiyuden Chronicles Rising that's coming in 2022, and it looks aesthetically very much like those HD 2D games like Octopath Traveler, but
Totally.
it looked really cool. But really, like the Xbox conference, I had it on in the background. There was stuff like occasionally I would tune in and be like, "Oh, this looks really interesting." There was a lot of military shooters where I was like, "This is not for me." But it was like the first time in a long time that I was like, "Should I get an Xbox with Game Pass?" Because Game Pass seems like it's going to be awesome in 2022 when like all of the games they were talking about are coming out.
Yeah, I mean, they showed. I believe they showed 30 games, 27 of which are coming to Game Pass. I mean, even the I do have an Xbox at my house. My buddy Ethan let me borrow it, and I subscribed to Game Pass because I didn't want to pay for any games on it. Um, and so I've played some Sea of Thieves with him, and the Sea of Thieves expansion that they showed off during the Microsoft thing, which is a crossover with Pirates of the Caribbean, looks super slick and like cool, and like I want to play that, and I want to play that with him, and like it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, yeah. So like I actually thought it was a fairly solid show for Microsoft. Um and that brings us to the Square Enix
Well,
presentation.
hold on. I do want to talk about the Square Enix presentation. But yeah, I just wanted to echo your thing about like a lot of military shooters in the Microsoft conference. It did just like underline for me that like there are huge swaths, huge normal swaths of like the gaming library that like I'm simply not interested in. And like it's weird to me how like violent and gun happy like gaming as a pastime is. And like that was just totally apparent to me in the Microsoft thing, where like all of the cool moments that they're trying to show off in most of those games were like cool moments where someone was shooting somebody else. And I was like, oh man, I don't know, trying to relate here.
Yeah, totally. I feel like every E3 it's a little bit of a shock to my system. Like I feel like in I can't might have even been last year, we kind of had this same conversation because it's really like the only time that you get such a concentrated amount of like these like uh platform wide sizzle reels where it's like, okay, here's what you should be excited about, here's what's coming for Xbox. And it is always a shock to my system because I am so tuned in now with gaming to like Nintendo and Nintendo
Yeah.
platforms that like you're like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, like there are so many games that are just all about like gun violence and
Yeah.
it's
So
hard
many
for me."
murder simulators.
Yeah, and it is such a just because um I just don't play those games anymore, and so it is always a little bit of a shock to the system. Like, and it watching the conference was also interesting for me because there are games that I thought looked really cool. Like Grounded is one where I'm like, that's such a fun idea. It looks really fun, but I know that I will never play that game because I will never have the
Right.
time to dedicate to playing in this like massively multiplayer online world. Um, but yeah.
All right, Mark, you now have my permission to move on to the Square Enix presentation, because man, there are they took some swings in that thing. So huge swings.
Well, let me say one good thing, and that is that I thought the Guardians of the Galaxy game, which is actually coming this year, it's coming in October. I think it's like October 26th. I thought that looked fun, and I thought it captured the
I think it
spirit of
looks
like
great.
the
Yeah.
movies really well. And the trailer was, in most cases, I dread funny video game trailers because I think
Yes.
that they are really hard to do well. But I actually thought that this one like was really good and actually felt
Yeah.
like a movie trailer. Like I have no idea how this game plays, but I thought that it was like really effective. I thought the character designs were really fun. Somebody pointed out that Rocket, he has like a little like
Yeah,
bead
his
thing that's
beard
like
is braided.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like one of the beads on at the top one is a little Groot, like Groot's little face. Um
Adorable.
yeah, it's just it just seems really fun. So that I was
Yeah.
really excited for.
I want to stay on that for a second because I'm also excited for it. I like seeing the Gamora and Drax specifically in more like comic accurate designs. Gamora especially, like
Mm-hmm.
they put those like big weird things on her eyes. And like it's cool to see them embracing both the sort of like MCU incarnation of the Guardians of the Galaxy, while also being more true to the comic origins. And you can see that also when they were showing off like additional costumes and stuff, where it's like, oh yeah, they're like really getting back to comic origins in these. And yeah, it's just it seems like it's going to be a cool, almost like Arkham Asylum style like deep dive into like history of the Guardians and like cosmic Marvel stuff. The gameplay also looked pretty cool. It reminded me a lot of the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake, where you are like kind of using normal combat to just sort of like fill up gauges and then use special abilities either of your own or of your partner characters. And obviously this is much more reliant on you calling on your partner characters to do whatever things they do, which is just it's fun and fast and fluid in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it looks like it's going to be the same here. I'm into it.
That's such a good point about it, like really splitting the difference or towing the line between the comic books, but also
Yeah.
the characters that we know from the MCU. And I feel like they do that so much more effectively in what we saw in this than in the Avengers game that came out last year, right? It didn't come out this year, last year. Um, it must have been last year. But yeah, so that one I think it has the potential to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now we may move on to the less glowing responses.
Well, the thing, I felt this a little bit from the PlayStation 5 reveal when they showed off Final Fantasy 16, and it at this presentation Square Enix showed off Stranger in Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins.
Stranger of Paradise.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to have to correct you on this, Mark. The name of this game is Stranger of Paradise.
Okay. That's simultaneously better and worse.
Yeah.
But so this is a game that's developed by Team Ninja. And I really and truly, when I'm watching the trailer for this, feel like I'm back in 2010. It has like the character designs are very like bald space marine. Like it made me think so much of the brouhaha that kicked up when Infamous 2 they showed off like the main character in Infamous 2 for the first time, and he was like the prototypical early aughts protagonist with like the shaved head, some white dude, and like that's exactly
his name is Cole.
yeah, and this is like exactly what I feel like we're getting with this Final Fantasy Origin game. I truly do not understand it.
Well, and oh my god, it's it's a combination of this trailer is a combination of so many things, right? What one just stemming from that game design that feels like hyper generic, but also like it's doing that that RPG trailer thing where it's just like a lot of disconnected dialogue that doesn't make any sense. And then like the internet hopped right on it, rightfully so. The number of times that the guy is like, "I'm here to kill chaos," which is just like it's a ludicrous statement. It doesn't mean anything other than, of course, that this dude is chaos. But like I don't know. Like I can't imagine a worse first impression for that game.
No, I think the only thing that topped it is they released a demo
Yes.
on PlayStation 5 shortly after the show, and nobody could get it to launch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's an absolute disaster. I mean, and the thing that's so weird about like all of that, did they show off Final Fantasy VII Remake again, or I guess the Intergrade like sort of upgrade already came out. It was released on Friday, I believe. So I don't think they touched on it there. It seems like such the thing I was driving at here is such poor brand management for Final Fantasy in this presentation, because like Stranger of Paradise looked awful. And the 1 through 6 pixel remakes, no one knows what those are, when they're coming, and why they're not coming to consoles. Um, and then like the rest of it was like some weird mobile stuff where and didn't say anything about Final Fantasy 16, which I guess makes sense because like that's connected to it's a PlayStation exclusive, so PlayStation probably wants to show it off. um no mention of a sequel to Final Fantasy 7 remake. It's just there's so much like brand care for Final Fantasy that needs to be done, but they just punted on it here. Like there's just none of it here.
Yeah, it just feels weird to me to feel so disconnected from what Final Fantasy is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a franchise that means or has meant so much to me. And now when they announce like new Final Fantasy stuff, like I don't really like care that much. And I kind of feel that way about maybe not to the same degree, but a little bit to like Resident Evil as to like what Resident Evil has become. I loved the remake of 2. I thought that was so much fun and
Yeah.
recaptured a lot of what I love about Resident Evil. But like, I realize now that I have not played a mainline Resident Evil game all the way through since 5. Like, I didn't play 6. I haven't played 7. I haven't played 8. I don't really feel like I'm missing out. It's just uh kind of like unusual. I feel a little like weird about it just to feel so disconnected from these franchises that I used to feel like so deeply about.
Yeah, and I still think you and I should get together and play 7 together because I also didn't play 7. I feel like I would like it, but I don't know. I mean, we were just decrying like superfluous violence in games. And what is a new Resident Evil game if not superfluous violence? So uh yeah, I don't know. And like I feel that I also feel the same way about Final Fantasy where like um I played a fair amount of Final Fantasy 7 remake. I like the combat of it a lot. But just like the presentation and like the voice acting and the writing, it's like of a higher quality than of like earlier Final Fantasy games, but like there's still that unmistakable like crap quality to it where you're just like, why is everyone tolerating this? Um and I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know why people are tolerating it.
Well, it's with Final Fantasy, every game is completely new, and so there's always the chance that it will like evolve into re-evolve into something
Yeah.
that I am interested in. But it's a little disheartening for me to see it like evolving away so much from the things that I like. And it makes me, even though I have been a Dragon Quest fan for less time than I have been a Final Fantasy fan, it does make me like want to protect my precious Dragon Quest, where it's like, no, like it makes me a little bit nervous when they showed off the trailer for Dragon Quest 12 and they're talking about it being like a little, like more adults. It's like, I feel like these companies, because like Japan has become so Nintendo dominated, but a lot of these companies still want to play with like the latest tech and like all that kind of stuff. They are
Yeah.
trying to develop games that have more of like a Western sensibility, and it is kind of depressing to me how that is manifesting itself. Where it's like, ooh, like I don't need everything to be like Dark Souls. I don't need everything to be like really like gritty. And I am so nervous what Dragon Quest 12 is going to turn out like now. Really,
Yeah, me
really
too.
nervous.
Me too. Mark, you can always still play 11, which I know you've not played almost any of.
No, I know we didn't do what we've been playing this week, but Patrick, I have restarted 11 and I am making my way through it because the mood really struck me, and so I'm
Amazing.
maybe it was like the my nerves about some of what's going on with the franchises I used to love. But I've restarted 11 and I'm really enjoying it so far.
Wow, that's incredible. I can't wait to talk to you more about that. I love that game. Yeah, a little weird, maybe not weird, because we just had that Dragon Quest event a couple weeks ago. But like, yeah, not even they couldn't even bring some of those Dragon Quest announcements over. Like, see a little bit more of the Dragon Quest II HD 2D remake. That would have been cool. I don't know. There was something else I wanted to say about Final Fantasy, and now I can't remember what it is. So we'll move on. Mark, was there anything else in this conference, or just like generally, how are you feeling about E3 as an entity this year? Do you feel as though you understand what it is?
I do, and I feel like it is just now a time for people to have like their press conferences, and I mean we'll see, you know, what Nintendo has in store. I feel like Microsoft put like their best foot forward. I am hopeful that Nintendo will put their best foot forward, but I feel like nobody else really came to play, and so it doesn't. I think it just almost reinforces the fact that the industry doesn't really need E3.
Yeah. I mean, even if you look at years past, like, I don't know, for me, all of the big and like fun E3 moments happen at Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony, right? Like, that's it. Like, everyone else has conferences, and I watch them, but then I'm always like, oh yeah, why did I do this? Like, I never get anything out of the Square presentation. The fact that they were showing off Guardians of the Galaxy, like a cool deep dive into a new game that I'm interested in, like, that's unique for them, and super cool. And so like that probably ranks among one of their best presentations, even though it's also pretty terrible on balance. So yeah, I will agree that like I don't really know what E3 is anymore. I don't really know if we need it anymore. But on balance, maybe this is the same as it has been in all years past. Again, we'll see with what Nintendo shows tomorrow. Do you have any final thoughts, predictions, hopes, fears about Nintendo's Direct?
Ooh, I hate to put anything out there given the fact that, you know, like most people will probably listen to this episode after Nintendo's had their presentation. So I'm going to punt and just say I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. So if you are in fact listening to this after the Nintendo Direct, why don't you just end this episode now and go and listen to the one where we talk about the Nintendo Direct, because it'll be out in your podcast feed shortly. All right, Mark, let's close this out. And that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter. Wherever you share it, we thank you for sharing it. Following us on Twitter is something you can do. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at NinCart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by Apip Betty. You can get more of his music by going to apipbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying we're going to go kill chaos. And thank you for listening.
Hey, it's Mia.
Hey, it's Allie.
And we host the Rom-Com Review podcast, P.S. I Love Rom-Coms.
Each week, we'll have incredible guests come and discuss a new rom-com, grand gestures, meet-cutes, and of course, that elusive chemistry. Mia, what are you doing holding that giant boombox over your head?
I'm hoping to win over listeners with this grand gesture. Take us back!
Find a new episode every week.
And subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Brought to you by Campfire Media. Wow, you're still holding that boombox.
Yeah, I've got great upper body strength. Thanks, CrossFit.
Yeah.